Hello everybody and welcome to episode 12 of Everything You Love. I'm Rob Arnold and I hope everybody is as healthy and as happy as they can be right now, and as we're all kind of looking forward to better days ahead of us. I also wanted to say thanks to everybody who's checked out my Kemper guitar tone and riffage video. The response to that has been totally awesome. Thanks everybody that's watched it. If you haven't seen it yet, I'll link it up here for you. And hey, now that I see what you like, I hope to make more videos like that. You got any ideas, anything specific that you'd like to see that you haven't already mentioned, feel free to do so below. Special episode today. Today I'm going to be telling stories and answering questions from my Patreon community. And those are folks who help support the show, that keep me out of the steel mills and working the graveyard shifts so I can continue to just create here, you know, and be creative, which is what I like to do, and that's totally awesome. I appreciate every one of you that is watching this video, watch my previous videos in the future. Everybody who's new to the channel, thank you for being here. But yeah, if you are interested in joining that community, I shall leave some breadcrumbs throughout the episode. And without any further ado, let's do it. All right, first question is from Luke Knutson. What is the most frustrating equipment fail you have experienced on stage, and how do you handle it? Of course, a guitar tech helps out there. The very first thing that comes to mind is Kemper's first show on the Ozfest tour in 2003. You can't believe, for a young band, the excitement that the band feels when you're told that you got the Ozfest tour. Around that time, early 2000s, Ozfest was the biggest, outdoor festival tour going in the States. And when we got word of that, it was the best thing ever. Just showing up there, the vibe, playing outdoors, just traveling in a pack with a bunch of bands and doing these festivals. I mean, the best, like I said. So anyways, first show, get up on stage, huge audience, totally awesome. We're opening with Power Trip. Feedback, Mark, this is Power Trip. I got nothing. All right, so equipment failure right off the bat there. Don't know what it is. Look back at my tech, I got nothing. But the rest of the band's still going, They're going, and I'm just kind of, should I be lip syncing right now? Should I go back and help? I don't know. Anyways, after a little while, he determined that I blew a fuse in the amp. How he determined that, I don't know. Imagine all the other components that could have gone wrong. A fuse is the last thing I would have checked. Maybe it's because it wasn't turning on or something and he saw it was plugged in. I don't know. Anyway, at any rate, he had to run to the trailer, which was far away. I know the gear had been lugged over maybe by like forklift or truck, something like that. So anyways, he runs to the trailer. He returns with a fuse and pops it in, gives me the thumbs up. I go to try to join in. Boom. Blows the fuse again, and he only brought one with him. No blame to him or whatever. Who would have thought? Anyway, so we determined there's a problem with the amp. Another band quickly lends me an amp. We get that going, and I certainly missed the first song, maybe the first couple songs. So yeah, that was a big bummer, a huge equipment failure, but obviously everything was cool, and the tour was great. So little things like that happen, but it reminded me of something funny about that. That particular amp was an original 5150, and I think it was Mark's, and I was just using it for this tour. We weren't yet endorsed by PB. I didn't own any PBs, anything like that. But on that tour, maybe a couple weeks later, some PB reps came out and met with us. And they were on the bus, and I was telling them, hey, I got this 5150 in the trailer that's blown. Could you guys fix it for me? And they said, absolutely. We'll take it with us right now, and we'll ship it to you as soon as it's ready, wherever you guys are. Great. So anyways, a few weeks go by, I don't hear anything. So, I think I give them a call. Oh, yeah, we'll check in on that. We'll get right back to you. Maybe another month goes by. Still nothing. Call again. This time they're like, Rob, sorry, we're just going to be honest with you. We lost it. I'm like, what do you mean you lost it? And they're like, we don't know where it is. Nobody knows where it is. So, but we're going to make it up to you. And so they certainly did. They you know, I think they sent me two 5152s right away, and they supplied us with all the gear we needed over the years, anything we ever needed. So it was worth losing that 150. And then Dave Ellefson from Megadeth became our PV rep in his time, like when he wasn't with Megadeth for a while, and that was super awesome. Just hanging with David and picking his brain about stuff. And he and Jim had a real cool relationship, being bass players, and that was just a really cool time. So yeah, there's that. Mike Franco, did you ever have an opening act you never heard of who eventually made it, maybe even had a hand in helping them get there? So the band that I think of for this instance is actually Trivium. They just come to mind because it was in 2003, I think, and I think we were on tour with Lamb of God, maybe in Richmond, Virginia, as a matter of fact. And I think Trivium was like added to the show or to the tour or something like that later on. But anyways, I hadn't thought anything of it. I didn't know much of it. But Mark came up and said, hey, you got to check out this band. They just played, or maybe they're playing right now. They're awesome. They're these young kids. They're super young, but they got a great sound, ton of energy, and they're really cool. And I was just like, all right, whatever. So sure enough, all of a sudden you started hearing Trivium all the time, and they exploded, and rightly so. You know, great band, good group of hardworking guys writing killer music. But before you knew it, years go by, we do plenty of shows with them, took them on tour, see them at festivals, on tours with them, all that kind of stuff. But years go by, next thing you know, we're opening for them. So a lot of times bands pass each other on the way up or down. I'm not going to say we were on the way down at that point or whatever, but they were just skyrocketing, and again, rightly so. Great band and cool dudes, and I'm proud of them and glad they're still doing it. I see they're still super healthy and writing music all the time and playing enormous festivals I'm seeing on YouTube and stuff, so cool stuff. What lurks beneath? What are your thoughts on the Kemper Profiler? And do you have one or use one? I don't own one, and I haven't had much experience other than making a profile for tonecrate.com. In like 2017, I got a call from a great engineer, Clifton Miles, who owns tonecrate.com. I don't know if that's the name, Tonecrate. And he brought me out to San Antonio and said that he wanted to profile all the Kimura tones. And so we did that. And we set up a rig, and I jammed through it, and we did all the Kimura tones and my effects tones, my elite tone, stuff like that. And so that's available through tonecrate.com. You can check that out and get the Rob Arnold signature Kemper profile pack. But personally, I'm still just an amp and head guy, and that's because I really don't I think the Kempers are super cool. I recommend them for sure. But I'm not just looking for a bunch of different tones or replicating or modeling a bunch of different tones. It's just not for me. I'm not really interested. But I still think it's an amazing amplifier that does super cool things, but I just not really into it. Herb Franco. Since you stopped touring, have you received propositions from major acts to join them permanently, or at least to be a studio sessions member? Not so much. There is one scenario, and this was very early on, right after I had left the road. So let's call it 2012 or 13. Through the grapevine, somebody had told me that there was a certain band wondering if I was interested in joining. And I'm not going to name that band, but I'm going to give you a clue. One of the things that was part of this band, and this is going to narrow it down to a small window. I'm still never going to tell you just because it's nobody's business. And they never even asked me directly. Again, it was just through the grapevine. I think somebody I know was asked to feel out what I thought about it. They were wondering if I was interested, but they never actually asked me. But the thing is that to join this band, I would have had to wear makeup. So I don't know about you, but I certainly can't see myself wearing makeup in a band, and that would be a deal breaker. But I mean, I wouldn't have been interested anyways because I had just gotten off the road. I was starting the studio, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so could be anybody, from Mudvayne to ICP and anything in between. Eminem Randall. I always thought of as Madam, but it's Eminem, Marty, and her husband Mike Randall. I have a hard question for you. If someone asked you to do an album, 10 songs, each song collaborating with a different artist you admire or think is awesome, which 10 people would you work with? No repeats. Okay, 10 people I'm going to make an album with. James Hetfield, Kirk Hammett, Lars Ulrich. Is that cheating? There's 3 right there. Let's see, who else? Chris Barnes, check. Phil Anselmo, Marty Friedman. But I'm not into Marty's all this Japanese stuff he's doing nowadays and that kind of stuff. Just I'm talking about his Megadeth era, which will always have a super special place in my heart. Igor, God, in his prime, I get a picture of him hitting those skins and playing those songs on KSAD and Roots, and I love everything before that as well. So definitely Igor, maybe Slash and Axl, that'd be awesome. Kerry King, Paul Bostaff, So that's got to be at least 10, right? I don't know. We'll find out later. But anyways, yeah, any of those guys, if you're interested, hit me up. Josh Maurer says, Implements of Destruction, 6, The Heart of It All, Samsara, and Black as Can Be. Black as Can Be is the closing track on my album with the Elite, Total Destruction. I'm going to link that up here because I think you should check it out if you haven't already. Are all epic tracks in their own right. Each one is unique and adds diversity to their respective albums. Can we look forward to new material of this scale on the instrumental album with Andy? Also, Josh just released a cool video on YouTube. You can search his name, Josh Maurer, of him covering Chimera's Impossibility of Reason. So check that out. Really good stuff. My album with Andy, for those who don't know what that is, Andy Herrick, the drummer of Chimera, I wrote an instrumental record that he played drums on back in maybe 2014. And actually, my entire intent for creating my Patreon community was to help support me so that I could finish that album. Most bands, and especially back in the day, and my entire experience with Chimera was when it was time to make a record, we got a recording advance from the label, and that allowed us to just work on music. Nobody ever had to worry about jobs and stuff and the entire time in Chimera because of that and that cycle we were in. But you'd tour and you made a living out there, and then when that ended, the label would front you money from your upcoming royalties to make the record, to pay for the studio costs, things like that. So I didn't have anything like that for this instrumental record. Obviously, I have a studio which I built, so that's cool. But still, the time and the sweat equity put into that. I have a family to help support and bills to pay, and got to keep the lights on in here and all that kind of stuff. So I got to work with other bands and still just work here at the studio. And so therefore, I just don't have the time to work on this album that I wrote with Arnold. Just a lot. I got a lot to finish with it. But I'd love to do that, and that's why I started the Patreon campaign, so that people can get involved, get the album once it comes out, plus all the other perks that's involved with that. So if you'd like to help get involved, the more patrons that come on board, the faster that album's going to be ready, and the faster it's going to be out there for everyone to enjoy. So will that album include stuff like those big instrumentals on there? Well, while everything is instrumental, I think that the songs are shorter. They're not these big grand opuses like Implements of Destruction, and the length of the Heart of It All, and those type of things. Because, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel like the songs are shorter. They're not these big grand opuses like Implements of Destruction and like Implements of Destruction and like the length of the Heart of It All and those type of things. Because, there was just one of those per Chimera album, where this is a collection of smaller instrumentals. And if they were all 10, 12-minute songs, and say there's 10, 12 songs on the album, it'd be a super long album, too long for a CD even, or whatever. So they're different, and I wrote them to be different. Also, to make those long, epic instrumentals, it was more of a collaboration between Mark, Matt, Jim, Chris, Andals, and I, where there was just a lot more to it, where these songs were just my creation. I didn't have input from anyone else, and so they didn't quite go on the journeys maybe that the Chimera instrumentals did, but they're special in their own way, and they're cool in their own way and have a completely different sound. So it's a different type of vibe, but I hope you'll be just as satisfied, and maybe a collection of 10 or 12 shorter songs may add up to the scope of a few longer instrumentals, if that makes any sense. Olivier, good to hear from you, Ollie. It's good to hear from everybody, no matter who. But he's got a two-part question here. One, would you rather have one song that made you famous but have a fan base that constantly bitches at you, or have a shitload of crap songs and they really suck but have a fan base that keeps on asking for more, so you kind of have to keep going with that crap? And part two, let's say you had to keep only one guitar from your collection. Which one would you pick and why? It would be my custom ESP RA3, which is what everybody just saw in my Chimera guitar tone and riffage video. That's the one. It's actually right here. This guitar was one of two of my first custom 6-strings. The RA1 is a custom 7-string that I got back in the day, and then around 2006 I had my first custom 6-strings made, and I just ordered two at the same time. The RA2 and the RA3 are twins, except for the 3 has the pick guard and different inlays. It has these block inlays, and the 2, I believe, just has regular circle, both like kind of mother of pearl look. But this is the one that my signature series RA600 is based off of. So there are a couple differences, but I back the 600s 1,000,000%, still play them all the time. But this is my baby right here. It just feels perfect. It's so solid. It's just a perfect guitar. Okay, and then that other question about, I think you're trying to say, would I rather have like a one big hit that made me famous and the rest of the songs are crap, or would I rather I don't know. Anyways, what comes to mind is Nickelback. Never made it as a wise man. I don't know how it goes, but anyway, everybody makes fun of Nickelback, but there's this enormous band that still probably packs arenas because of one or two huge hits. But what would I rather do? I don't know. They both sound. I suppose I'd rather have a big hit. I don't know. I was about to say I'm glad I'm not in that situation, but I would like to have a huge hit and then just kind of take it from there. I would try to make more big hits like that. I don't know. Tough question. Randy Tapia wants to know, what are my thoughts on the newer bands in the metalcore Djent? Have you checked out bands like Era, Periphery, Architects, etc., and do you think you'd be interested in implementing any elements of newer material in your next projects? When I hear that stuff, like on Sirius, Liquid Metal and stuff like that, it's like always, it's cool. I can always jam it. It's not like I change the channel or anything. I can jam out to it, but it doesn't like have the impact on me like the stuff I grew up listening to, and I don't know if that's just because I'm old and jaded or whatever. I know there's going to be people that agree with me that you just like what you like, and I mean, well, new stuff's cool or whatever. I'm just really not on the hunt for new stuff. I don't know. And will I incorporate that type of stuff? I would say no. I mean, maybe if I hear some cool trick, I may, but I believe that when bands try to do stuff out of their wheelhouse just because or something, or try to incorporate some new technique, that the fans see right through that. Of course, there are exceptions, just like everything, but I don't know. I don't think that, I never have heard something where I'm like, oh, I'm going to use that while I'm trying to write. That's just not the way my mind works. Nothing against it, but so I would say no. But That being said, maybe over a year ago, all of a sudden this song came on, Liquid Metal, which I would call like from the Djent genre, that really caught my attention. And it was from a band, Born of Osiris, which I had heard of, and because we had done shows with them a lot back in the day. And it was the song called Silence the Echo from their latest album, The Simulation. And let me tell you, this thing just has, the way it starts out, it's got this new sound. That, and that's kind of what I'm after. I'm always looking for something like fresh, and that's it's almost like impress me sort of thing when I'm hearing these bands. I want to be impressed with something fresh. I want to hear something that's gone the extra mile. And to me, this did. It's got this cool, like futuristic sound. And a couple people I played it for, they're like, oh, it's undeniable. The groove is undeniable. And like I had one buddy, singer of Disaster, Matt Demko, he's like, dude, this sounds just like the future. And it's just a perfect way to describe it. And the rest of the song totally stands strong. It's a killer song and killer album too. So I recommend it. The Simulation by Born of Osiris. That's currently the Djent that I'm into. Mark Lackman has a two-part question. Do I use some kind of professional ear protection? Are your ears still doing well after all these years of loud music? I do actually have my earplugs right here. I never used to wear any ear protection, but one time, I think we were in San Francisco, maybe like 05, 06 or something, and some lady came out and she just did ear mold injections for all of us for free. And I was like, all right, we'll just try that, and send us all earplugs for free, and these were them. Not this pair, I'll get to that in a second. But so having these custom ones where they fit perfect just in my ear because a mold was made, and it's got these removable different, you can put different decibel filters in there for how much you want. So really, I put these on. It's not like having regular earplugs in. I can still hear everything perfectly, but supposedly it's just protecting like my ears from like harmful high end or something like that. So I can wear them on stage and still hear everything perfectly and just know that I'm kind of being protected. So I like that. But a funny thing, one time in my last tour with Chimera, maybe second to last, something like that, it had a few too many drinks on stage or during the show, and I must not have been thinking. And after every show, at the end, I tend to, reach down and slap some hands, throw out some pics, to people and stuff like that. For some reason, I don't know why, but I took out my earplugs and I must have handed them to somebody, in the crowd, like I was giving them a pic. And then the next day when I went to go open my thing and they were gone, it kind of came back to me, and I was just like, oh no, because these things are like $300-400, and so I had to order another pair. Fortunately, I still have the molds and everything, but yeah. So if you're out there, the person, and I know it happened somewhere in Ohio, if you're out there and you got my earplugs, leave a comment below. Just let me know. I don't need them back or anything, but just curious. Okay, and then the second part of Mark's question, what are your thoughts on the following albums, especially the guitars, drums, and production? Malevolent Creation, Retribution. Unfortunately, I've never heard Malevolent Creation in my life. Heard of them, probably cool, but never heard them. Obituary, Cause of Death. Again, unfortunately, I've never heard that record. I had The End Complete. Oh, no. I had World Demise growing up, which I loved. Loved the album, loved the production. Love Alan West. Heard of him. When 6 Feet Under started, and Alan West was the guitarist of 6 Feet Under. Another reason that I wanted to check him out was because I heard Alan West was in the band, and I loved World Demise. But I think the production on that is totally killer. Solstice. Unfortunately, I've never even heard of the band Solstice. Death Human. Not familiar with that record. I know. Symbolic Rules and production's classic on that. Cannibal Corpse, The Bleeding. Come on now, my second favorite album of all time, behind Injustice for All. The production, to anybody today who's used to modern production, would frown upon it. It was spectacular, and my friends and anybody that loves The Bleeding still, no matter what, thinks that production and everything about it, the songwriting, is just fantastic. I could sit here and talk about The Bleeding all day. That is, like I said, my second favorite album of all time, so it can do no wrong. Sepultura, Rise, another one. definitely in my top 15 records, I'd say. Perfect, front to back, incredible production. And, the production isn't so much so as important as the songwriting and the songs. You can get away with crappy production if the songs are fantastic. So you don't even think about that as a kid if the songs are fantastic, what the production's like. But now, years later, as we can look back, we can still see, especially if we're at that time, it's great production, great everything. And then I had no idea that all those records were produced by Scott Burns, but it makes sense. Scott's the man. And is there any other producer that can be identified just by listening, like besides Scott Burns? I think maybe, I don't know, would you say Ross Robinson? You don't think of his productions as having a certain thing, but I mean, he creates sounds for bands, I'd say, like for Korn. Obviously, he did great on that first Slipknot. Who else? Terry Date, come on, the Pantera stuff. I'd say him. You know that sound. You know that's Terry Date. Deftones, stuff like that. So I'd say that Terry Date and Ross Robinson are right there with Scott Burns, just in that sort of way. Aaron Prentice, hey Rob, do you think you'd be interested in doing a studio tips and tricks episode at some point? Maybe you can show us a few of your favorite hacks and tips for getting good sounds or performances in the studio. Being a recording engineer myself, I'm always trying to get more insight and knowledge from some of my favorite artists. And given the fact that watching the Kimura docs when I was a teenager was what got me into music production and writing in the first place, I absolutely would love to see some more about this. Thanks as always for the great content. In terms of me making videos about it, I think there's a whole different workflow to that. I've never recorded my screen as I'm working in a Pro Tools session and talked along with it. You know how those guys do those, which are really cool, and I've watched tons of course, but I haven't thought about it myself. Occasionally when I'm working in a session, whether it's editing drums or tracking a vocal or doing something, I'll come across a tip or something that I've learned through experience where I'm like, I bet guys would like to know this, or I should share this or whatever. So just hearing your question here, and there's been some other dudes that have asked for this type of stuff too. Perhaps I'll start just making a little list, and when I compile whatever 5 or 10 little tricks, maybe I'll try to make a video for it. But as of right now, that isn't really in my plans. But that doesn't mean you can't reach out, ask me anything in the comments or send me a message, if there's something specific you want to know, I'm happy to talk about it. Dougie Reed, Douglas, what's up? Hey Rob, my question would be, what are the main hallmarks of your sound as a guitar player? Aside from gear, what makes your playing so instantly recognizable and iconic? The answer is easy. You make my playing recognizable and iconic, and I thank you for that. And by you, I mean all of you out there. The fact that you take notice of it. Where's Eeyore? I'm going to bring Eeyore in here. Thanks for noticing. I'm uncomfortable answering that. It's almost like asking a hot chick, saying to a hot chick, "Hey, you're so beautiful. Can you tell me why you're beautiful?" Well, guys like my hair, and they say I have pretty eyes. Now, I don't know. I'm just fortunate that dudes like my riffs, and thank God for that. Brian Stadden from Ichabod Crane. Check out Brian's band. He's got a solo project, Ichabod Crane. Cool stuff. You can search that on YouTube. Shout out to Ichabod Crane. How was it adjusting to a more normal lifestyle after having to hang up Kimura? And do you see yourself in a band touring in the future, or just being more of a producer engineer on more of the production side of things? P.S. Thanks for being a badass player. Thanks, just like I said to Dougie, thanks for noticing, man, and appreciating it. I appreciate that. How was it adjusting? Well, like I've said a few times before, I think, I kind of was preparing for that. I knew that my time in Kimura was coming to an end, and I knew I wanted to build this studio And I didn't leave Kemper because I wanted to. It's just that I knew that was going to be my next chapter, to build this place and just to continue working on music. There was no end to that. But for the most part, it's pretty easy to get used to being back in your own bed and not living out of a suitcase. And traveling wasn't one of the things I really enjoyed about touring. It was just kind of part of it, like flights and all that kind of stuff I wasn't super stoked on. So it wasn't really more of an adjustment period. The biggest adjustment was the mental aspect of it, of giving up Kemper, and that was super, super hard for me. I talk a lot about that in Everything You Love, I think episodes 1 and 2, if anybody wants to check that out. Also, my recent podcast with the Mosh Zone, I talk a lot about that. I talk a little bit about it too on my podcast with Doc Coyle. So yeah, it took me a long time to come out about that and just kind of describe what that was like, and it was just a rough time. So anyways, it was just leaving the road kind of was more of a relief, to get away from what was bringing me down at the time, but sad at the same time that I had to step away from something that I had spent so much time helping build and had such a passion for. And do I see myself touring in the future? I don't think so. I'm always open to opportunities and looking for opportunities and things like that, but I'm not actively searching to get into a touring band. If Metallica called, of course I'd say yes. And there are probably certain other bands that I couldn't say no to as well, but it'd have to be just the right situation. I'm happy being behind the scenes. I'm happy doing this and just being behind the desk here. Finally, we got time for one more. Dakota Aiken. Hey Rob, my question is on Resurrection. Looking back, what was it like working with Jason Sukoff and his team? In addition, what was it like working with Andy Sneap for tracking drums and mixing? I think Resurrection has the best production of any album in the Kemper catalog. I love Jason and the whole crew's work down at Audio Hammer, and I think we can all agree Andy Sneap is a legend when it comes to metal production. Thanks, and keep up the good work. Totally agree. Sneap is a legend. So is Sukoff and Mark Lewis, that team there at Audio Hammer. I love the production on Resurrection as well, and I think of that album as the funnest time in our career, and it's well documented in the Resurrection DVD, which you can check out online here, and I recommend everybody check that out. Todd Bell did an amazing job capturing that whole process for us and being down there, and it was just so fun. We lived in a hotel down the street, and would just wake up every morning and drive there to the studio and just laugh all day with Jason and Mark. And then head back and just repeat for whatever that was, a month or 6 weeks or something like that. And it was just fun and a great creative time. And also the band Andals had come back to the band, and everyone was just on cloud nine. We had signed a new deal with Ferret. The business was doing really well at that time. Everybody was getting along, and it was I consider that personally the best time in our career for me. Great tours we were doing, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and then working with Sneap. He did the drums. That was fun. There's also a lot on that in the Resurrection documentary. So check that out. Anybody who hasn't seen that, and it's just a super cool time period. So with that, I'm gonna let you guys go. I appreciate everybody that's made it this far. I appreciate just all the support. As I said at the beginning here. An extra special thank you to my patrons. And again, if you'd like to get involved with that, you can do so at patreon.com/RobArnoldWorld. No commitments, just check it out. Read what I got going on there. Read what some of the perks are for that. And know that anything you can do for that is just helping more of these videos be made, more music coming to you. It's just that I, like everybody, just need a little help and support and appreciate everything. If you like this video, a thumbs up really helps other people see it as well. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I'd appreciate it if you do that. Thank you to everybody, all the subscribers, past, present, and future. Cheers, everybody, and I hope to see you on the next episode.